Hey. Welcome to another episode of Evolving Perspectives. My name is Mattea, your podcast host, and on this podcast, we dive deep into the stories of everyday people, discussing the hurdles they face and the triumphs they've achieved. We have real, raw conversations where we laugh, we cry, we uncover the incredible resilience within us all. From overcoming personal setbacks to navigating life's unexpected twists, each episode that you tune into is a testament to the human spirit's capacity to persevere and thrive. Tune in as we share moments of vulnerability, inspiration, and ultimately empowerment. Get ready to be uplifted and inspired as we showcase the unwavering strength of the human heart on Evolving Perspectives. Chime in. Hey, and welcome to another episode of Evolving Perspectives. My name is Mattea Elise. I am your host, and I am so excited that you have joined us for yet another episode. On this episode, it's going to be just me, your girl, on here all by herself, because there's some things I just want to share with you all. The last few episodes that I've dropped, I've had some amazing guests, so make sure you go back and listen to those. But on this podcast, something came to my mind a few weeks ago, and I thought about it, and I was just trying to navigate how to really put this almost like pen to paper, as they say. And for those of you all who do not know me personally, who will be listening to this podcast, I am a licensed cosmetologist. My husband is a licensed embalmer and mortician and has done that since he's been 16 years old. And I have been with him, of course, his entire career. And even when we first met, it was always this thing like, you do what now? But I want to just talk to you all today about my life with him. And I am going to title this particular podcast, How to Find Joy When Death is All Around You. And so this is not one of those podcasts that will be emotional, I don't think. But I do want to share my heart in regard to being married to a mortician. I always tell people this is not like being married to anybody who has a 9-to-5, who is just a straight entrepreneur. This is on a whole nother level. No pun intended. But it's so funny because I feel like God is just so intentional about how he sets our lives up. And you'll hear me probably say a lot of times throughout the series of this podcast is that don't just trust your, trust the process. Don't just trust the process, but trust your journey. Even the things that you don't think matter. So I grew up in the DMV area, and I was privileged to grow up in a home with not just my mom, but also with my grandmother. And so she and I were extremely close, like extremely close. She was the mother of the church. She was the neighborhood babysitter. She was the confidant for the girl down the street. She was everything to everybody. And I was privileged to be, I like to say, her favorite. God rest her soul. But anywho, my cousins, y'all don't get mad. But anyway, facts are facts. But one of the things that I had to do with her a lot, or that I did with her a lot, was go to funerals. And I know that sounds crazy probably to a lot of people now, because I recently met this girl and we were talking about a funeral, and she's like, I've never been to a funeral. I'm like, in your whole life? She's like, no, not ever. This girl's like in her 20s. I'm like, wow, that's really interesting to me. But anyway, so I've been around that because old school church, I don't know if anybody's familiar, but old school church, the mother of the church or the repast committee did the food for when they had the funerals at the church. So she was over that committee. And so she would be the one that would have to get to the church early, make sure the food was good, make sure the food was done so that the family would be able to have the repast. So I went to funerals all the time. Like, so it was nothing for me to be like, ooh, a dead person. Like that never, ooh, people crying. That never was a thing for me. So when I initially speed up to several years ago when several years ago when I met my husband. And so when we initially met, of course, he didn't just come right out and say, oh yeah, you know, I'm a mortician. But when we were talking, it was funny because I met him at a Christmas party and I was kind of dating this other guy at the time and some things that kind of went down and I was like, man, kind of bummed about it. And one of my good friends was at the party with me. And my husband, his name is Brian, came in and she was like, you know, Mattea, don't worry about, we're going to say John Doe. Don't worry about John Doe. You need to be thinking about him right there. And I'm like, I don't even know who he is. Who is that? And so lo and behold, he ended up coming up to me and was like, hey, how you doing? You know, you look so nice, whatever, you know, all the pleasantries or whatever. And the rest was really history. And it was so funny because when I initially saw him, like we're at a Christmas party, so everybody's dressed festive, right? But here he comes late, first of all, and then he was in a full suit. And I'm saying to myself, who comes to a Christmas party in a suit? How whack? What are you doing? Okay, don't judge me. It just is what I was thinking. But only to come to find out that he was coming from work. So he's a mortician. So he had a funeral that day. So he was like, if I go home, change my clothes, I ain't coming back out. And so, anywho, make a long story short, people often ask me, like, you don't get weirded out by, you know, being married to him. You know, you're not afraid of the dead. I never was afraid. I never felt any type of way. It never was like, ooh, that's eerie. Oh, you're weird. How can you do that? Never, ever crossed my mind. Not one time. It's the craziest thing, but it never did. And I really feel like it was just a setup because God knew back then what I would be encountering in regards to having a mate that was in the funeral industry. So it was never a thing for me as far as being skittish or whatever. And so it's really been an interesting journey because when we first got together, we were he of course was working at a funeral home, and I'll never forget the first time he called me and he's like, "Hey, Mattea, I know you do hair and everything. We're still dating at this time. I know you do hair and everything, and I was just wondering, this lady we have, she needs her hair done, and they don't have a beautician. You think you can come help me out?" I don't even think I blinked. My thought was, because I'm an entrepreneur, this is just what I do. That's just how I roll. I was like, well, how much are they paying? So he told me the amount, and I'm like, to throw some curls in the front? Oh, bet. What time you need me to be there? And so and at that point, I don't think I ever looked back. And so now, speed up to today, we have now established our own funeral home. We are located in Gates County, North Carolina, which is in northeastern North Carolina. My husband is licensed in 4 states in North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, and DC. And I'm super proud of his journey. I'll have to do a whole new podcast just with our story and how we arrived at the place we're at now. But the thing about it is being married to a mortician is quite different. We just gonna say it's different because you can have a plan and that plan can change in 2.5 seconds. I think when we initially got together, of course, he worked for a funeral home. He always has done that. And we didn't always service people that we directly knew. It was kind of like, oh yeah, that may have been somebody, a friend of somebody, but nobody personally that we knew. And so moving to opening up our own funeral home, of course, it was always the desire of my husband to do that. I had a whole background in customer service and administrative work and things like that. So, I mean, on top of me being a cosmetologist. So we just work together very well. And I am so grateful. God is so intentional. God is so intentional. Sometimes you don't, I know I'm deviating, but sometimes you don't understand why things are happening in your life and you're trying to figure out what is really the purpose of this. But when you speed up, or not speed up because you can't speed up, but when you get to a certain place in your life and you look back, you realize that all of those things that had question marks beside your name really were building blocks to get you to where you are in that moment. And you will be able to use them for your good, for His glory, that you will be able to walk out and fulfill your life's purpose. And so I say that to say, with us working together, it has definitely been something quite remarkable that I'm super proud of, because my husband comes from very humble beginnings, as do I. And for him to come from a rural area where being in business probably wasn't even a conversation that was had in his household. I'll let him tell his own story when he comes on the podcast. But seeing where he came from and to see how he has grown into the man and the entrepreneur that he is today is quite remarkable. And it almost brings me to tears every time I think about it, because it really speaks to the miraculous working power of the Father that we have. And I'm not talking about his earthly father. His earthly father was good too, but I'm talking about our Heavenly Father. And just allowing yourself to be aligned with the will and word of God, and how doing that, you will see manifested blessings and things to unfold in your life that you would have never been able to even think or imagine could even be possible. And so this podcast, this particular one, is all about finding joy when death is all around me. And I want you all to make sure you're following me on social media. So it's on Instagram and on TikTok at Moments with Mattea. And on those platforms, I share a lot of what we do. And one of the things that we thoroughly enjoy is traveling. Like, that's our thing. And so people kind of know us from the travel that we do. And at one point in my life, I was very much like, oh, I don't want to share. I don't want to post. I don't want people to think any type of way. Like, is it going to be perceived that we are boasting or making somebody else feel some type of way because we get to do things and they may not have the same opportunity? But I remember being home one day and I was, kind of struggling with that. And I know it sounds crazy, struggling, but I really was struggling because I never want to be perceived as anybody who's arrogant or somebody who's boasting. But I remember sitting at home and I really felt like the Spirit of God was like, Mattea, I want you to be an example. And I want you to be able to show people I feel like I'm about to cry. I want you to be able to show them the life that I've blessed you with. Not because you're boasting, not because you're bragging, but my hand has been on your life. And I want you to show them what friendships look like, relationships look like, what it looks like to have joy in your life. And not that you have it all together, not that things are perfect in your life, but I want you to be able to give someone a glimpse and a glimmer of hope. And oftentimes I feel like, especially in the social media space, that you see people who are doing well for themselves, and it's almost like, oh, but that's for them. But that's them. Oh, they have 500,000 followers, but that's them. And you never really think like it can happen for you. But even as you're listening to this podcast today, I want you to reignite the fire that you may have once had. I want you to put those dreams and desires at the forefront of your mind. And I want you to start dreaming again, because it will happen for you. It can happen for you. It is not just for them. It is for you too. And so I want you to know that God wants to give you exceedingly, abundantly, above all that you can ask, think, or imagine. Sometimes I pinch myself because I dreamed of the life that I have now. And not because it's just so glorious, because I have my own trials and tribulations. I ain't arrived yet. I haven't arrived yet. However, I am so grateful that we have worked extremely hard and been so diligent and been a great steward over what He has given us. And I believe that we are living and being able to walk out the plan that He had already had, but we're able to experience the joy that comes behind it. And so when I think about the title of this being finding joy in the midst of death being all around, of course, with us, it was different when, he was working for another firm. But when you work for yourself, what comes along with that is you start servicing people that you know. And not that you just know them, you know them. And we have, and I can't speak for my husband, I can only speak for myself. For me, that has been challenging at times because I am the professional that you hired, but I'm also grieving with you as a friend, as a family member, as a loved one. And so at times it takes emotional strength to get through those pockets. And it doesn't ever really go away. You just live with it. And it doesn't make me sad. It doesn't make me depressed. But what it does do is heighten my awareness of what I need to do to ensure that joy is around me at all times. So how do I do that? Y'all know I like to always give you some takeaways because I'm not just getting ready to just drop here and just give you some information and talk to you and leave you hanging. But what does that look like for me? How do I find joy? Like I said, we love traveling. And people would often say, like, every time I turn around, y'all are going somewhere. But what people don't realize is that although we enjoy traveling and doing things and doing activities with our family and our kids and stuff like that, we are very intentional about those things. And so often in life, we are emotionally exhausted because we have not given ourselves an opportunity for our emotions to be built up in a positive, affirming way. And what do you mean by that, Mattea? What that means is I recognize that the place that I am can be emotionally draining and exhausting. And because I know that about myself, and I know that about the career choice that we have and the life and the path that we have, because I know that, I also am very intentional about doing things that bring me joy and happiness. I'm not just going to allow myself to sit with the sadness that comes along with doing what we do. I'm not going to do that. So in your life, you may not be a mortician. You may not be around death all the time. It may be a career. It may be a person. It may be a family member. It may just be your life right now. When you know there's certain things, because there are certain things that you know in life just can be draining, period. It just is. But because I know that, then I also know that I have to be intentional with how I engage with it. I often talk about grief. We wrote a grief journal a few months ago, almost a year ago now. A grief journal is available on Amazon, and it's writing prompts that help you through your grieving journey. And I remember going through that process and of writing the book and saying to myself, like, oh my gosh, how can I help people through their process? And so it is acknowledging that grief is present, number one. Because of course we always are like, oh, you'll be fine. Oh, God chose his best. Oh, the best rose was picked from the garden, and all of these words and phrases and supposed to be like encouraging. And I think intention is well spent or well said or whatever, you know what I'm trying to say. The intentions are good. However, People don't always want to hear that. But I do think that it's important that you recognize what it is that you need to make yourself tick and what you need to create that balance in your life. And so for us, how do we incorporate joy when death is all around us? We like to travel. That brings us immense amount of joy. And so even as you go through your journey, you may have a child with special needs. You may have a family member that you're the primary caregiver of. You have to make sure that you are intentional about the time that you invest in yourself to bring joy and happiness and peace to yourself. And it doesn't mean that you're spending a whole lot of money. It's not even about that. Like some people, you may go to a park once a week and just walk around the park or get on the monkey bars and the swings and just have a childlike experience that will give you that joy. You may be a person that loves to go to the gym and work out all of your frustration and all your anxieties and things. Whatever that looks like for you, I want you to start thinking about that, because so many times we don't think about really what does make me happy? What does bring me joy? We just are living. We're just existing. But I really believe that it is the intention of God for us to live on purpose, in purpose, for His purpose and for His glory. And when we do that, we understand that it is His will for our life to have joy, to have peace, to have happiness. There are things that can exist at the same time. Like I can be going through a tribulation in my life or a trial, but I can also be experiencing joy on the other side. Like they can live together. And some people think that you have to live in a particular space and just live with your blinders on, and I'm just in this and it's just a lot and my life is just terrible and all these things are happening. But when you take the blinders off and your vision is now peripheral, you can see that although what I see in front of me may be trying to overwhelm me and consume me, there is joy and happiness to the left and to my right. I just have to take the initiative to turn my head to the left, to turn my head to the right. And I want to encourage you today. Stop just looking straight forward. Stop just being consumed with the things that are going wrong in your life, but really tap into what is going right in your life. And if nothing is going right in your life, you create that lane. If that means you taking time out to go to a sip and paint, or you going to hang out with your good friends, whatever, having a night on the town, taking yourself out to eat, going to a movie, going to the opera, whatever, doing something that you've never done before, all of those things, start writing down. I want you to write down what you love. If you didn't have any restrictions, any time restraints, any money restraints, start there and then work your way down. What are things that bring you joy? It may be a conversation with a good friend. It doesn't even have to be. I think sometimes we get so consumed with, because of social media especially, with, oh my God, it has to be over the top. Oh, it has to be so amazing. Oh, it has to be. It doesn't even have to always be like that. It could be something very simple. But I want you to do that. So as I wrap up, there is joy. Joy can be found. Happiness belongs to you. Joy belongs to you. Peace belongs to you. It is the will of the Father for you to experience joy, peace, and happiness. And no matter what you're going through, no matter what you see around you, joy is there. Peace is there. I want you to open up your hands and I want you to receive it. I want you to grab it and I want you to hold it tight. Because trials and tribulations in life will always happen. That's just how it goes. But in the midst of that, I want you to choose joy. Choose joy. You know, in this podcast, we're all about evolving into who God wants us to be, evolving into our purpose, evolving into wherever we want to be, who we want to be, who we want to become, all the things. That's what we do here. So today is your day. It's never too late to start again. It's never too late for a clean slate. Today is your day. Today is your opportunity to take your life back. Take your life back. Take your peace back. Some of these situations have tried to take you out. But I dare you to make a declaration that you will no longer have me in a chokehold, but I will have all that God has ordained for my life. And that includes peace, joy, and happiness. That concludes our time here today on Evolving Perspectives. And you know how we do. Always remember to keep evolving. Love y'all, and I mean it. Until next time. Thank you again for tuning into Evolving Perspectives. Remember to like, subscribe, download, and share with your friends and family about our episode that releases every single Monday. And always remember to keep evolving. Until next time, be easy.